Hello everyone and welcome back to another video, and today I want to talk about of something that I saw not too long ago. I was searching through the YouTubes and I saw this video right here, and I thought it was super interesting. There was a lot of points that I agree with, but I just want to kind of add to the discussion. Like, I don't think he's going to be the last one. I think he's going to be close to the last one, but not exactly the last one. So a little background, let's set the mood here. The world of My Hero Academia is really closely related to our own modern world. And that is because, well, they don't really have anything crazy in terms of technology. The only crazy thing they have is obviously the superpowers, the quirks. But everything is pretty much else the same. Like bullet trains, they got planes, they got the same cars. So we can relate that world to our own, and this is gonna be a stepping stone to what I'm gonna be talking about. So we know that One for All is passed down through generations, and through every generation, it gets stronger and stronger. And what this guy added, I can't remember his name. Hold on, let me look it up. What Plot Armor added was that by the point that it got to Deku, it was so powerful that if his vessel, his body, was not strong enough, a single use could have broken his body into little tiny pieces, basically making him explode from the inside out. And that's what's gonna happen to the next user after Deku if their vessel is not strong enough. But here's the thing, though. Deku, he had 10 months to become a vessel. And that is absolutely not enough time. Even if you train every single day, which he did, he became a true good vessel, but not a true vessel. He could use the power without breaking his whole body, but he still had repercussions. He was still breaking his arms and legs when he was using it. Unlike somebody like All Might, he had way more time to train, so he had a better grasp of the power than Deku has. So what Plot Armor, the YouTuber, led to was that he mentioned this theory in the My Hero Academia universe, which I didn't know about until he mentioned it. It's called the quirk singularity theory. It basically means that over time the quirks will blend together so much so that they would become a pure, and they would be harder to control. And that's because the quirks evolve so fast that our bodies cannot keep up with it, and thus we can't control it. But here's what I want to add to it. When it comes to One for All, he mentioned that because of this theory, the next successor will not be able to handle the stress. And what I want to add to it is that since One for All is only generation to generation, it's a bit wider apart from each other. So somebody who's like, say, 42 can give it to somebody that's 18, and that's a whole huge generation from, let's compare it to our real world here. I read this article while I was researching things to say for this video that said in 1960, the average human height went up 1 inch from 1960 to 2002. That might not seem like a lot, but it could be enough for the body to handle One for All. Or also, since we also got taller, we also got fatter. And fatter doesn't mean necessarily bad. It can also mean bigger muscles. So from 1960 to 2002, that's a whole generation. And if we take that into account and kind of apply it to One for All, it could actually make a difference. Because somebody from 1960 did not have the muscle mass or the body mass as someone from, like, say, 2002. And again, it could make a big difference, though small in terms of evolution of the human race. It could make a big difference. And if let's say Deku waits until he's like 40 something and gives it to somebody who's 15, it could actually make a difference again. But then he's gonna have to search for someone who has a better bezel, because when Deku received it, he had no experience. He's basically gonna have to give it to a second year or a third year in high school in order for him to even have a chance of surviving the quirk. Another thing I want to touch on is that Plot Armor mentioned that if One for All is passed down to the next generation, the stress on the body could be so big that they would make them brain dead. But here's what I think. I think if a vessel is strong enough, but the mind is not, they're gonna lose something. And that might not be the whole functions of the body, but it could be something pretty big still, like emotions or memory. If they lose their emotions, they become this emotionless character, which could make for an interesting anime, but a boring main character. Somebody who's emotionless is more of a side character rather than a main character. And then we have the memory thing. If somebody loses their memories, any outside stimuli could cause them to go berserk. Let's say if they lose the memory of the best friend who they saved time and time again, and then that best friend comes to them and hugs them in the middle of a fight, they could lose their mind and start going berserk. Or it could just completely kill the memory and the emotions, and you just have a dead robot that his only function is to save people and be a hero. That's all he will live for. He would function like a hero. He would eat, sleep like a hero. Anything else? Nothing. And the only two things that would be on his mind is hero and pass down quirk. Anything else? Nothing. Completely empty. And at that point, I think they are brain dead. But I think that would take at least 2 or 3 more generations for that to happen. Again, like I said, while not a lot, the increase in body weight / muscle mass and height could make a difference. So, moving on to the next point. Light manga spoilers here. I haven't read the manga, but I know about the spoiler, and it's not too big. It's not going to kill the anime for you. But if you want to click off, I'll put a timestamp on the screen, and then you can switch to that timestamp. Anyways, so we know from the manga that Deku can have 6 other quirks on top of One for All, because the other users had quirks on themselves and they passed it with One for All, but it wasn't strong enough until Deku inherited it. He can use them, but someone like All Might couldn't because the power wasn't strong enough. And what Top Bomber here added was that eventually the generations, they're going to have so many mix of quirks that it's going to be hard to control. But I think it's going to be like a whole situation of like seeing your predecessors off to the left of you or the right of you, but you can't see the beginning or the end, and those are going to be clouded or blocked off to that user, because One for All just doesn't want them to have those quirks, or it think it's going to be too much for them, so it's going to block them off. What I think would happen is that One for All's ancestors would kind of make a mental block in the current users, so that way they don't have too much stress on their body, both physically or mentally. And we've seen this happen before with Deku, in the fact that they help him like move on, or they give him a will to fight on. Another thing I want to touch on is that the YouTuber Plot Armor, he mentioned that One for All was made specifically to end All for One, and once All for One is done, is there a reason to give One for All to the next generation? And while I think that's like a fair point, I don't think that's what's gonna happen, because I mean, All for One is already in jail. Like, he can't do much at this point except for like work in the shadows. But the only reason why it was made specifically to kill All for One is because that was the biggest threat at the time. Like his brother, he found him as a big threat, and in the future generations, they thought he was the biggest threat too. But as soon as one villain comes down from the pedestal, another one takes his place. So, All for One was just a means to an end, but it will not be the end because somebody else more powerful would take his place. I don't think One for All was meant or created specifically for All for One. I think it was mostly created to save the human race or protect a part of it. And that's why it keeps going. The will to live for One for All is protect. And I think it's gonna be the end goal for everybody else in the future. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I really liked the other guy's video, and I thought it was interesting. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just kind of adding to it, and I'll probably be checking out more of his videos. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.